Sometimes, the one who smiles the most is the one who hides it the most. Have you ever noticed how insecurity can disguise itself as friendliness, bravado, or even calculated silence? There are small gestures, a compliment that sounds mechanical, an indifference that hurts without raising a voice, a fickleness that promises today and disappears tomorrow, that count more than speeches. The problem is that, when we lack confidence or seek approval, our own vulnerability blinds us to these signs. The good news: there is a simple, direct, and practical way to read people and ourselves more clearly, without paranoia or cynicism. Stoic philosophy already whispered this: character is revealed in repeated action, not in the spectacle of the moment. Before pointing fingers, let's look within. The perception of good or bad also depends on our lens. When we lack humility, we confuse openness with attack. When we lack empathy, we interpret limits as rejection. When we lack gratitude, we only see flaws. And when we tolerate lies, even if they're white lies, we open cracks in the integrity that we'll later call destiny. The goal here isn't to demonize anyone, but rather to strengthen your inner confidence so you recognize patterns, set boundaries, and more peacefully choose who deserves access to your time, affection, and energy. Get ready to observe what almost no one talks about: discrete attitudes that deliver motivation, defense mechanisms that reveal insecurity, and daily practices that increase your clarity without hardening your heart. We'll explore practical signs, real examples, and concrete exercises, the way you can apply them today without relying on mood, luck, or the vibe of the day. In the end, you won't be judging the world, but rather better understanding the contours of relationships, while honing your own posture with integrity, humility, and empathy. If something triggers a reaction, great. It's vulnerability opening space for growth and for a calmer confidence. Admitting mistakes turns insecurity into strength. Admitting "I was wrong" is a key that dismantles the armor of insecurity. When you own up to your mistake, pride loses fuel and peace returns. It seems like weakness, but it's strength. Courage with humility. The mind stops making excuses and integrity returns to the helm. Instead of indifference, empathy for those affected emerges. The body relaxes, the voice slows, and trust is rebuilt brick by brick. Those who admit early learn early. Those who delay fuel inconsistency. And the white lie becomes unnecessary because the truth becomes manageable. This reduces conflict, simplifies decisions, and creates space for gratitude. In Stoicism, error is a fact of reality, not a personal drama. Accepting it guides action instead of igniting the theater of blame. Immediate practice. When you notice a slip-up, name it, repair it, and learn within 24 hours. Naming it means stating the fact, without beating around the bush or self-punishment, vulnerability with clarity. Repairing it means asking about the impact and offering concrete corrections with empathy. Learning means recording lessons and adjusting the process so it doesn't happen again. Use the formula: what I did, who affected it, how I'll fix it, when. If your voice shakes, that's okay. Courage doesn't require a steely stance. To strengthen your posture, read "The Ego is Your Enemy" and "Mindset." Write down 3 mistakes from the week and a gratitude associated with each one. Create a trigger. Listen to your automatic defense, breathe, and choose humility. Delegate small decisions to build trust in others and in yourself. Little by little, insecurity becomes fuel for consistent growth. Humility as an antidote to isolation. Humility isn't about shrinking. It's about making room for reality to speak. When we practice humility, isolation loses its power and insecurity subsides. Instead of monologues, dialogues emerge that restore trust and belonging. Automatic defense gives way to attentive listening and empathy that heals rough edges. Recognizing limits reveals vulnerability without drama and increases perceived integrity. Those who don't need to win every conversation don't fall into indifference or strategic coldness. You notice inconsistency diminishing because commitments become clearer. Gratitude arises for correction received, not resentment for honest criticism. Humility avoids the subtle lie of "I already know." which closes doors to learning. Relationships flourish when the other person feels their voice carries real weight. It's curious. When you let go of control, you discover you gain more respect. How to apply today. In meetings, speak last. Gather data before passing judgment. Ask questions that invite stories. How did this affect you? Empathy in practice. When you hear a mistake, respond with "Thank you for telling me." Gratitude disarms egos. Establish a ritual. 3 minutes of silence before important decisions. Write down what you don't know. This strengthens integrity and eliminates hidden insecurity. Communicate expectations in writing to reduce inconsistency and communication noise. Practice humility by delegating small choices and trusting the team's judgment. If you notice indifference, respond with presence. Eye contact, open posture, pause. Cut the social lie of everything's fine when it isn't. Replace it with gentle clarity. Useful readings, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius and The Four Agreements. Applicable now. Close the day by reviewing a lesson learned and a courageous gesture. Confidence grows through repetition. Schadenfreude. Taking pleasure in the pain of others reveals disconnection. Schadenfreude is that little smile we feel when someone stumbles, and it says more about us than about them. Behind this secret relief often lurks insecurity, seeking cheap validation. The mind thinks, if he fell, I'm safe. But this erodes integrity and creates indifference. Where humility is lacking, comparison becomes an addiction. Where empathy is lacking, humanity becomes a scoreboard. It's an emotional anesthetic that prevents vulnerability. It's better to laugh than to feel with the other. The problem is that this momentary chemistry increases the fickleness of relationships. No one trusts someone who celebrates their falls. Trust detects micro-expressions and withdraws. Furthermore, it fuels the internal lie that value depends on the defeat of others. Stoicism suggests another path, measuring oneself by one's own mastery, not by the failure of others. When we exchange comparison for cooperation, energy returns to circulating with gratitude. And, curiously, we grow more when we extend a hand than when we raise an eyebrow. Practice today. Catch the impulse and turn it into an empathetic question. What is this person feeling? If it's someone close, offer concrete help. If not, offer respectful silence. This is integrity. Write down 3 other people's victories for which you are grateful on a card. Practice the look that celebrates without indifference. Use the stop technique. Stop, breathe, observe vulnerability, proceed with humility. Replace harsh jokes with specific encouragement. Objective praise builds true confidence. Create a circle of merit. 5 minutes a day to recognize your own progress, without lies or comparisons. To reduce inconsistency, set monthly personal improvement goals and review them every Friday. Useful readings, Letters from a Stoic, and The Courage to be Imperfect. Bridges between firmness and vulnerability. On social media, before commenting, ask, does this increase integrity or just fuel my insecurity? Cultivate gratitude rituals after seeing someone succeed. The mind learns that success is abundant. Gradually, you'll realize that supporting others doesn't diminish you. It expands your calm confidence. Fickleness erodes trust. Fickleness is when the compass shifts with the wind and the route becomes a lottery. With each promise that disappears, trust loses a thread and the rope loosens. Behind it, there's almost always insecurity trying to please everyone at once. A lack of integrity to say no now, and an excess of anxiety for an immediate yes. This irregular dance generates inconsistency that tires and costs relationships dearly. Without an anchor, the mind makes excuses, and the little lie becomes a defensive habit. The Stoic in us seeks principles. Few, clear, actionable, and repeated. Humility here means admitting limits and preferences without fear of disappointing. Empathy means letting those who depend on you know early, instead of disappearing into silence. Indifference is tempting, but it only postpones conversations that need to happen. When coherence emerges, vulnerability feels safer to breathe. Start by defining 3 principles of action: quality, deadline, and respect, integrity in practice. Turn them into daily checklists. Routine reduces inconsistency and drama. Before promising, ask the Stoic question, is it under my control? Applied humility. If it isn't, negotiate conditions with empathy and record it in writing. Create a commitment standard. Scope, deadline, touch points, goodbye accidental lies. Use a shared agenda. Transparency fosters trust and disarms insecurity. Train the brave no. Short, sweet, honest. Gratitude for understanding your priority. Read Essentialism, McEwen, and Atomic Habits. Consistency arises from smaller choices. Conduct a weekly review, what I promised, what I delivered, where I failed, vulnerability with method. If you slip up, communicate immediately. Quick correction is worth more than posturing. Goodbye indifference. Gradually, your word becomes an emotional contract that sustains stable trust. Complaining incessantly feeds inner scarcity. Complaining is like carrying a leaky bucket. The more you talk, the more energy escapes. Insecurity loves this habit because it gives you a sense of control without changing anything. Focusing on the bad creates indifference to what works and dulls empathy for those trying to help. Without realizing it, you fuel inconsistency. Emotional, one day everything is terrible, the next bearable. The mind, to protect itself, flirts with the lie. It always goes wrong. When it's not true. The antidote isn't foolish optimism, it's perceptive integrity. Seeing the whole, not just the shadows. Stoically, we observe the facts, filter what's ours, and act on what's within our reach. Gratitude acts as a muscle, not a motivational adhesive. When exercised, it reduces noise, calms vulnerability, and strengthens true trust. Humility here means admitting that complaining may have become a mental addiction. An addiction is replaced by consistent practice, not by Monday's promises. Practical experiment, rule of 3 adjustments. If you complain, propose 3 courses of action. If there's no action possible, practice specific gratitude for something small now. Create an evidence journal, 3 daily lines of progress, integrity versus internal deception. Use the 5-minute technique. Act minimally on what depends on you today without drama. As a team, replace complaints with clear requests. What, why, by when, humility and empathy. To practice your observation, read meditations and the obstacle is the path. Apply 1 idea per day. When you notice inconsistency, pause and ask, what is within my control right now? Cultivate gratitude rituals before bed. Trust sleeps better when it hears facts. Avoid indifference. Validate others' pain without competing for a suffering trophy. Give the news a 24-hour break and observe the change in mood. Vulnerability is grateful. Tomorrow, come back with criteria. Information that guides action, not fuel for insecurity or a pretext for control. Excessive control is born of fear. Controlling everything seems prudent, but it's often insecurity disguised as efficiency. When we try to manage people and contexts, confidence withers and the atmosphere sours. Deep down, it's fear of the unexpected and our own vulnerability. Without humility, we confuse coordination with micromanagement and reap indifference from others. The team becomes silent, creativity dwindles, and inconsistency grows under the rug. And the mind fabricates a useful lie. It only works if I do it, to justify excess. The Stoic path is to separate control from influence and strengthen integrity in choices. Listening, delegating, and agreeing on clear criteria are acts of empathy, not weakness. When you accept margins of error, you open space for real growth. And curiously, gratitude emerges. For having good people by your side and time for the essentials. Letting go of some reins isn't losing authority. It's gaining sustainable respect. Direct practice. Define a clear minimum viable of what you expect and agree on light checkpoints. Delegate an entire task per week and accept the other person's style. Humility in action. Replace orders with questions. What do you need from me? This builds trust and empathy. Set limits on intervention. Only intervene if there's a real risk, not out of insecurity. Create an autonomy contract. Objectives, deadlines, standards, integrity without suffocation. When anxiety hits, Name the vulnerability and breathe before engaging in the process. Monitor results, not keyboard clicks. Process control becomes indifference to the person. Review the week. Where did I micromanage? Where was I clear? Adjust inconsistency with routine. Useful readings, turn the ship around. And the rule is no rules. To expand your repertoire. Publicly thank those who made good decisions without you. Gratitude builds culture. And remember, trust is like a muscle. It grows when it undergoes microstrains, not when it lives in a comfortable lie. Indifference and monopolizing the conversation weaken bonds. When someone monopolizes the conversation, they send a silent message. My story is worth more than yours. This awakens the listener's insecurity and sows distance instead of trust. Indifference isn't just a lack of affection. It's active inattention that hurts without shouting. Without humility, we interrupt to show we know, and empathy evaporates in seconds. Then comes the social lie. It was just enthusiasm, when it was actually fear of not being seen. Relationships need shifts, talking and listening, to maintain integrity and warmth. Inconsistency arises when one day we listen and the next we take center stage. If we want solid bonds, we need to also allow room for other people's vulnerability. Listening that validates messages and emotions creates breathable security. In practice, asking what touched you about that opens doors that advice can't reach. And, curiously, talking with space produces more gratitude than any brilliant speech. A simple experiment, 50-50 rule, half the time listening, half the time speaking with presence. Use open-ended questions. How, what, when, and pause before responding active. Humility, mirror emotions. It seems like that frustrated you. To cultivate empathy and trust. If you notice indifference emerging, address it. Sorry, I lost it. Would you continue? Avoid the multitasking lie. Eye contact is visible integrity. In groups, invite the quiet ones. I want to hear from you. It reduces inconsistent participation. To practice, read nonviolent communication, which combines firmness with vulnerability. Set a signal with friends. Hand on heart equals, I want to talk later, without rushing. At the end of the day, record a situation in which you listen more and what you learned, practical. Gratitude. If you slip up and dominate the speech, correct it with a short summary and hand back the microphone. Over time, conversation becomes a place of care, and insecurity loses its habit of shouting. Lying undermines emotional foundations. Lying seems like a shortcut, but it exacts a heavy toll. It scratches at integrity from within. It almost always stems from insecurity. Fear of not being accepted, of disappointing, of losing ground. But today's adjustment becomes inconstancy tomorrow. Different versions demand different memories. People feel, even without proof. Trust becomes restless, like an alarm that won't turn off. And our vulnerability hides behind masks, increasing emotional distance. Over time, estrange. Indifference sets in. We protect our image, not our relationship. Without humility, we justify it. It was for a good cause, piling on elegant excuses. But the body knows. Tension in the voice, a shifting gaze, and peace no longer holds. Empathy is compromised because lying requires focusing on oneself, not on the impact on the other. And gratitude withers. It's hard to be grateful when you fear being discovered. On the Stoic path, truth is a daily practice, not a heroic weekend spectacle. How to practice today? Replace, I didn't mean to worry you, with concrete humility. I feared your reaction. Use the 3C protocol. Clarity, care, and consequence. Simple truth, spoken with empathy, assuming consequences. If someone has lied, quickly correct it. What I said X was Y. I'm sorry. How can I fix it? Create an integrity journal. 5 minutes/day to review where I was clear and where insecurity led. Reduce inconsistency with written agreements and deadlines. Transparency prevents noise. Practice microtruths. Admit small inconveniences before they become defensive dramas. As a team, agree on no surprises. A mistake communicated early is worth a confidence boost. Practice gratitude for honest feedback. It strengthens your courageous vulnerability. Useful reading, Radical Honesty, Blanton, and Principles, Ray Dalio, for systems that prevent lies. Set boundaries. Truth is not rudeness. It's precision with respect, empathy over ego. With repetition, telling the truth becomes lighter, and the emotional foundations return to supporting who you are. Emotional coldness is armor that costs dearly. Emotional coldness is armor that seems like protection but weighs us down. It often stems from insecurity in the face of old, undigested losses. To avoid hurt, we choose indifference. To avoid trembling, we silence vulnerability. The problem is that the heart hoards affection, and trust is lacking. Without the humility to admit fear, we create operational distance under the guise of efficiency. Integrity suffers because we feel one thing and offer another. Inconsistency appears, close in gesture, absent in human touch. Empathy diminishes because reading the other requires us to remove the visor of self-protection. Sometimes we even resort to the social lie of everything's fine to close the subject. But bonds are nourished by presence, not by well-edited performance. The Stoic path is to feel without drowning, and to act with measure and respect. Practice today. Name the emotion with a simple phrase. I'm afraid. Vulnerability with integrity. Use the 1-2-1 protocol. 1 fact, 2 emotions, 1 need, empathy that reduces insecurity. Combine openness signals with those you love. Can I talk? I just need to listen. Active. Humility. Schedule micro-exposures to affection. A 5-minute hug, a sincere message, specific. Gratitude. In conflicts, replace icy silence with pause and feedback. This preserves trust. If you get stuck, tell the small truth. I don't know how to say it. Avoiding the elegant lie. Create weekly rituals of presence. Coffee without screens, a walk, and questions that invite storytelling. To practice, read The Courage to Be Imperfect and Meditations, balancing tenderness and firmness. Observe your emotional fickleness and negotiate clear boundaries without indifference. I can find 30 minutes today. In the evening, record 3 gestures of warmth you offered. Gratitude warms the heart. With repetition, the armor loses its function and you discover that proximity is also discipline. Destructive criticism is insecure self-assertion. Destructive criticism is often a megaphone of insecurity disguised as candor. When we attack others, we try to inflate our own confidence, which is withered within. We lack the humility to recognize limits, and there's an abundance of comparison that sabotages empathy. The tongue runs ahead of integrity, and indifference arrives disguised as sincerity. For a few minutes, the mind believes the lie that putting someone down makes us greater. The side effect is fickle bonds. Today we praise, tomorrow we hurt without warning. Vulnerability flees the scene, and the environment becomes a minefield for any conversation. The recipient retreats, the speaker hardens, and trust melts like ice on the asphalt. Stoicism reminds us, the only sure measure is our own progress, not someone else's downfall. Evaluating is necessary. Humiliating is a waste of energy and an opportunity to learn. Replacing "why are you wrong" with "how can I help" builds bridges of empathy and gratitude. Immediate practice. Use the CALM method. Clarify, point out, limit, show support, align next steps. Clarify the observable fact, maintaining integrity. The report was missing the source, without adjectives. Point out the impact with humility and empathy. This generated rework and insecurity within the team. Limit the scope of criticism, avoiding inconsistency. Focus on behavior, never on identity. Show genuine support. Offer resources and time, demonstrating gratitude for the effort already made. Align next steps in writing. Transparency reduces defensive lying and noise. If the urge to lash out, pause for 3 breaths and name the vulnerability that hurt you. At home, swap sarcasm for a clear request. Indifference becomes presence when listening is active. Useful readings, crucial feedback, and letters from a Stoic. For courage with tenderness. At the end of the day, record a specific compliment you gave. Your confidence grows when you acknowledge it. Repeated consistently, the critical spirit becomes service, and insecurity loses its place. Fall, review, and return, the healthy cycle. Falling isn't a sign of weakness. It's an invitation to recalibrate your course with humility. When a fall happens, insecurity tries to narrate tragedy. You respond methodically. First, embrace vulnerability. It hurt, and it's okay to hurt. This preserves integrity. Then reject the internal lie of "I always make mistakes." Examine facts, not labels. Revision requires empathy with yourself and those affected, without indifference to the pain. Map out where there was inconsistency. Vague promises, unclear criteria, poorly stated limits. Then, adjust a simple process that prevents repetition, restoring trust. Small accumulated lessons are worth more than great weekend heroes. Include a gesture of gratitude. Whoever pointed out the failure helped you grow. The Stoic outlook focuses on what depends on you today, not on "if I had" yesterday. And each well-executed comeback teaches the body that courage is routine, not spectacle. Guided practice. Use the QRR framework. Fall, review, return in 24 to 72 hours. Fall. Describe the event in 3 lines with integrity and 0 excuses. Review. Identify 1 controllable cause and 1 uncontrollable cause. Objective. Humility. Return. Define 1 action now and 1 future prevention. Cultivating calm confidence. Communicate with empathy. It was like this, I feel sorry for X. I will do Y until Z. Avoiding social deception. Create a weekly failure log. Consistency reduces inconsistency and anxiety. Readings. The obstacle is the path and mindset. To turn stumbles into practice. Gratitude ritual. Celebrate micro-progress. A clear email. A clear limit. If you notice indifference to your own mistake, invite a partner for a joint review. Protect vulnerability. Focus on behavior, not identity. Integrity stands firm. Close by asking, what small adjustment will get me closer to my best tomorrow? A bridge to daily practice. From awareness to daily action. Noticing patterns is only half the battle. The rest is a gesture. When insecurity beckons, transform insight into a simple, visible step. Wake up with a short intention. Today, I practice humility when asking for help. When speaking to someone, choose empathy over argument. Ask before offering an opinion. Late in the morning, review a promise and deliver. Integrity that nurtures trust. If you notice indifference, look back. What does this person really need to hear? Stumbled? Avoid the elegant lie. Tell the small truth with vulnerability. In the afternoon, practice gratitude for something specific. It trains the brain to have resources, there's no shortage. When inconstancy creeps in, resort to the basics. Sleep, hydrate, breathe, walk. Write 3 lines about what depends on you now. Focus reduces noise. In the evening, celebrate micro-victories. Trust grows discreetly, the size of a habit. You don't need to conquer the world tomorrow. You just need to conquer yourself today, 1 action at a time. What patterns have you recognized in yourself? Insecurity disguised as control, indifference that shielded fear, or the social lie that only delayed necessary conversations? What act of humility can you practice now to restore integrity? In which relationships does empathy need to precede judgment? Where would a dose of vulnerability make room for true trust? Try the 7-day experiment. A daily micro-commitment. Admit, repair, thank, listen, tell the truth, delegate, review. Note the impact on yourself and others. Notice how inconsistency diminishes when principles become routine. And, if this content resonated, share it with someone who needs a gentle push toward their own strength. Want to continue this journey? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive the next chapters. Simple, practical, and applicable, always with your feet firmly on the Stoic ground.